The alien doctors stood around the hospital bed, staring at their patient with confusion written across their faces. The human woman lying before them should have been dead. Her injuries were too severe for any living creature to survive. The crash had happened 3 days ago. Her small ship had collided with an asteroid, tearing through the hull like paper. Metal fragments had pierced her body in 7 places. Her left leg was broken in multiple spots. 2 of her ribs had cracked and damaged her lung. The doctors had found her floating in the wreckage, somehow still breathing inside her damaged suit. What confused them most was not that she had survived the crash. It was that she had stayed awake the entire time. She had sealed her own wounds with emergency foam. She had programmed the distress beacon. She had even managed to give them her medical history when they found her, speaking clearly despite the pain that should have knocked her unconscious. The lead doctor, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms, checked the readings again. He turned to his assistant and spoke in their native language, forgetting that the translation device was still active. This is not possible. The pain levels would shut down any normal brain. She should be in a coma. The human woman opened her eyes and looked at him. I can hear you, you know? The doctor's face flushed a darker shade of blue. My apologies, but you must understand our confusion. Your injuries are severe. The pain must be unbearable. It hurts a lot, the woman admitted. She tried to shift in the bed and winced. But I've had worse. Worse. Another doctor stepped forward, her scales glittering under the lights. What could possibly be worse than this? The human thought for a moment. Broke my back when I was 20. Fell off a building during construction work. Was in bed for 6 months. This will heal faster. The doctors exchanged looks of shock. One of them pulled up the human's medical records on a holographic display. The list of injuries was long. Broken bones, burns, cuts, sprains, each one serious enough to hospitalize most species for weeks. How are you still alive? The scaled doctor asked quietly. The human shrugged with her good shoulder. Humans are tough, I guess. We don't go down easy. Over the next few weeks, as the human healed, more doctors came to study her. They ran tests. They took scans. They asked endless questions about human biology and culture. Each new piece of information confused them more. A specialist in nervous systems discovered that humans could feel pain just as strongly as any other species. Their nerves worked the same way. The signals reached the brain with the same intensity. But somehow, the human brain could choose to ignore those signals. It could push the pain aside and keep the body functioning. This goes against everything we know, the specialist said during a meeting with other researchers. Pain exists to protect us. It forces us to stop and heal. Every species in the galaxy has automatic shutdown mechanisms when pain reaches certain levels. But humans can override this. Not just override, another researcher added. They train themselves to do it. They practice experiencing pain so they can handle more of it later. The doctors had interviewed the human at length about her life on Earth. She had told them about her training, about learning to push through discomfort, about exercises that hurt but made her stronger, about competitions where humans deliberately exhausted themselves to see who could endure the longest dot to the aliens. It sounded like madness, like a species that enjoyed hurting itself. But the human had explained it differently. We don't like pain, she had said. Nobody likes pain. But life hurts sometimes. Earth was a dangerous place for our ancestors. They had to hunt animals stronger than them. They had to survive harsh winters and hot summers. They had to keep going even when they were hurt, or they would die. So humans evolved to be able to push through pain. It became part of who we are. The doctors studied Earth's history and were horrified by what they found. The planet was classified as a death world in the Galactic database. Extreme weather, dangerous predators, deadly diseases, natural disasters. Everything about Earth seemed designed to kill the creatures living there. Yet humans had not just survived. They had thrived. They had become the dominant species on a world that tried to destroy them every day. One doctor specialized in evolution spent weeks analyzing human development. She presented her findings to a large audience of researchers from different worlds. Humans did not evolve to be the strongest species on their planet, she explained, showing images of Earth's predators on a large screen. They were not the fastest or the biggest, but they evolved something more valuable. They evolved persistence. She showed footage of human hunters from ancient times. They would track prey for days, following the animal until it collapsed from exhaustion. The humans never gave up. They never stopped. They just kept walking, kept chasing, kept pushing forward until they won. This persistence is built into their psychology, the researcher continued. Humans have a concept they call stubbornness. It means refusing to quit, even when quitting makes logical sense. Other species see this as irrational, but for humans, it is survival. The audience of alien researchers sat in silence, processing this information. One of them finally raised a tentacle to ask a question. What are the implications for the galactic community? Humans have only recently joined us. Their technology is still developing. But if what you say is true, if they can endure things that would break other species. The researcher nodded slowly. That is exactly what concerns me. We have been treating humans as a minor species, primitives who need our guidance. But I believe we have misunderstood them completely. A species that can turn pain into strength, that refuses to surrender no matter the cost. That grows more determined the harder things become. Such a species is not weak. They are potentially the most dangerous beings we have ever encountered. Another researcher objected. Dangerous? They seem friendly enough, cooperative, eager to learn from us. For now, the first researcher replied, but consider what would happen if we ever became enemies. How do you defeat a species that will not stop fighting? That can endure injuries that would kill others? That becomes stronger through suffering. The room fell silent again. No one had a good answer. Back in her hospital room, the human woman was undergoing more tests. A young alien doctor was measuring her pain tolerance using a device that sent small electric shocks through her arm. The intensity increased gradually. Tell me when it becomes too uncomfortable, the doctor said. The human watched the display counting upward. The shocks grew stronger. They started to hurt. Then they hurt more. The doctor's eyes grew wide as the numbers climbed past levels that would have made most species scream. You can stop now, the doctor said nervously. This is already beyond safe limits. I'm okay, the human replied. I felt worse. The doctor turned off the machine with shaking hands. How? How can you tolerate this? The human flexed her arm, testing how it felt. You get used to pain after a while. It's just signals in your brain. You can learn to not let it control you. The doctor made notes on his tablet, his hands still trembling slightly. After a moment, he looked up at the human with an expression that might have been fear or respect or both. Your species frightens us, he admitted quietly. We have never met anyone like you before. The human smiled gently. We frighten ourselves sometimes too. But that's okay. Fear just means you're paying attention. What matters is what you do despite being scared. The doctor nodded and left the room, his mind full of questions. In the hallway, he met the lead researcher who had given the presentation earlier. What did you learn? She asked. That we need to revise everything we thought we knew about survival and strength, he replied. The humans are teaching us that power is not just about force or technology. Sometimes it is about simply refusing to break. The researcher looked through the window at the human woman resting in her bed. Despite her injuries, despite weeks of painful recovery, she looked calm, almost content. "The galaxy is about to change," the researcher said softly, "and I am not sure we are ready for it." The news about human pain tolerance spread quickly through the galactic network. Scientists from dozens of worlds requested permission to study humans more closely. Within 6 months, the Galactic Council established a research facility dedicated entirely to understanding humanity. The facility was built on a neutral station, far from any home world. 20 human volunteers agreed to participate in the studies, drawn by generous payment and the promise of advancing galactic knowledge. They came from different backgrounds: soldiers, athletes, medical workers, construction laborers. Each brought their own stories of surviving impossible situations. The aliens organized the research into different categories: physical endurance, mental resilience, recovery rates, survival instincts. Each category revealed something that should not be possible. In the physical testing area, a human man ran on a machine while monitors tracked his body's responses. The alien observers watched as his heart rate climbed higher and higher. His muscles began breaking down from the strain. Red warnings flashed on the displays. "You must stop," the monitoring doctor insisted. "Your body is damaging itself." The human kept running. Sweat poured down his face. His breathing came hard and fast. But he did not stop. "Just 5 more minutes," he gasped. The doctors looked at each other in alarm. One reached for the emergency shutdown, but the lead researcher stopped him. "Let him continue. He knows his own limits." 5 minutes later, the human finally stepped off the machine. He bent over, hands on his knees, breathing heavily. But he was smiling. "Good workout," he said between breaths. The monitoring doctor examined the data with disbelief. "You have caused significant tears in your muscle tissue. This will require days to heal." The human straightened up and stretched. "Yeah, I'll be sore tomorrow, but that's how you get stronger. You push past your limits, and your body adapts. You deliberately injure yourself." Another doctor asked, "Repeatedly?" "That's basically what training is," the human confirmed. "You stress your body in controlled ways so it builds back tougher. It's science." The doctors added this to their growing file of human peculiarities. Every other species in the galaxy exercised gently. They moved their bodies just enough to stay healthy, never pushing into pain. The idea of intentionally damaging tissue to improve it seemed like insanity, but the results were undeniable. The human volunteers were physically capable of far more than should be possible for their size and strength. They could push themselves harder and recover faster than any other species. In another section of the facility, researchers studied human psychology. A young human woman sat across from an alien psychiatrist, answering questions about her childhood. "My parents used to take us camping in the mountains," she explained. "Sometimes we would hike for days. It was hard. My feet would hurt. I would get tired and want to quit. But they taught me to keep going. They forced you to continue despite your discomfort?" A psychiatrist asked, taking notes. "Not forced exactly. Encouraged. They would say things like, 'Pain is temporary, but quitting lasts forever,' or 'You're stronger than you think.' They wanted me to learn that I could do difficult things." The psychiatrist's tentacles curled with concern. "This seems harmful. Why would parents deliberately cause their children distress?" The human considered this. "Because life causes distress sometimes. They were preparing me for reality, and they were right. Now, when things get hard, I remember those hikes. I remember that I've pushed through difficulty before. It gives me confidence." "You transform past suffering into present strength?" "Exactly. Every hard thing you survive makes you better equipped for the next hard thing." The psychiatrist shared these findings with colleagues from other species. They tested the theory across all 20 human volunteers and found it to be universally true. Humans did not try to forget their painful experiences. Instead, they remembered them proudly, using them as proof of their capability. A soldier explained it during one session. "I've been in combat, seen horrible things, got wounded twice, but I'm still here. So, when civilians ask me how I deal with stress, I tell them the truth. Nothing they face will ever be as bad as the worst day of war. Everything else is easy by comparison." The psychiatrist recording the interview paused. "You use trauma as a measuring tool?" "Kind of, yeah. It helps keep things in perspective. Like, is this situation actually dangerous, or does it just feel uncomfortable? Usually, it's the second one. And if I survived actual danger, I can definitely survive discomfort." The researchers compiled extensive reports on this phenomenon. Humans possessed an unusual ability to recontextualize suffering. Where other species viewed hardship as something to be avoided and forgotten, humans viewed it as educational. They had countless sayings about this. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. No pain, no gain. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. These were not just empty phrases. They represented a fundamental aspect of human psychology. In the medical wing, doctors studied human healing. They were amazed by how quickly humans recovered from injuries. A construction worker had broken his arm during a demonstration. The doctors had set the bone and expected him to rest for several weeks. 3 days later, they found him trying to lift weights with the injured arm. "What are you doing?" the doctor demanded. "Your bone has not healed yet. I'm testing it," the worker replied. "Seeing what it can handle, you will damage it further." The human shrugged. "Maybe, but sitting around doing nothing makes you weak. I need to keep moving, even if it hurts a little." The doctor wanted to argue, but checked the scans instead. Despite the human's reckless behavior, the bone was healing faster than expected. The body seemed to respond positively to the stress, directing more resources to the injury site. "This should not work," the doctor muttered. But it did work. Across all the human volunteers, researchers found the same pattern. Humans healed faster when they remained active. Their bodies seemed designed to repair damage while still functioning, rather than requiring complete rest. The head researcher presented these findings to the Galactic Council after a year of study. The presentation lasted for hours, covering every aspect of human capability. "We must revise our understanding of biological limits," she concluded. "Humans operate under different rules than the rest of us. Pain does not stop them. Injury does not stop them. Exhaustion does not stop them. They can be slowed, certainly. They can be hurt badly enough that their bodies finally shut down. But the threshold for this is far higher than any other known species." A council member from an aquatic world raised a question. Are they immune to pain? No, they feel it intensely. But they have learned to function despite it. Their evolution on a hostile world demanded this capability. Another council member asked the question everyone was thinking. What are the military implications? The room grew quiet. The researcher had prepared for this question. A human soldier can continue fighting with injuries that would incapacitate any other species. They can march farther, carry more, and endure harsher conditions. They require less rest and recover more quickly. And perhaps most significantly, they become more determined the worse their situation becomes. There is a term in their military history, last stand. It refers to when soldiers fight to the death rather than surrender. Most species view this as tragic. Humans view it as heroic. They would choose death over capture? A council member asked, shocked. Not always, but more often than any other species we have studied. Humans have a strong aversion to surrender. They view it as shameful. Their history is filled with examples of small forces holding out against overwhelming odds, simply refusing to quit. The council members absorbed this information with growing unease. Humans were still a minor power in the galaxy. Their ships were slower, their weapons less advanced, their territory small. But if war ever came, if humans ever needed to deploy these capabilities, the researcher ended her presentation with a warning. I recommend we maintain positive relations with humanity. A species this resilient, this stubborn, this willing to endure suffering for their goals, they would be terrible enemies. We should count ourselves fortunate that they seem to value cooperation and peace. The Council voted to establish formal diplomatic channels with Earth. They also quietly updated their military threat assessments, moving humanity from minimal concern to approach with caution. Back at the research facility, the human volunteers were preparing to return home. One of them, an older woman who has survived multiple disasters, spoke with the lead researcher before departing. "Did you learn what you wanted to know?" the woman asked. The researcher considered her answer carefully. "We learned that humans are far more capable than we imagined, and far more dangerous, though I believe you do not intend to be." The human smiled. "We're not dangerous unless you give us a reason to be. We just want to live our lives, same as everyone else. The difference is, we've learned that sometimes you have to fight for the right to live those lives. Earth taught us that. History taught us that, so we stay ready. Ready for what? Whatever comes next. That's the thing about pain and hardship. You can't avoid it forever, but you can learn to face it without flinching. That's all we've done. We've learned not to flinch." The war started in a distant part of the galaxy, far from Earth and the core worlds of the Galactic Council. The Krynner Empire had been quiet for generations, building their forces in secret. When they finally struck, they moved with devastating speed. Their strategy was simple and brutal. They would surround a system, cut off all trade and supply routes, then send a single message: surrender or starve. Most civilizations chose surrender within days. The few who resisted found their resistance was futile. Orbital bombardment destroyed infrastructure. Blockades prevented food shipments. Populations went hungry, and hunger broke willpower faster than any weapon. The Krynner had perfected this approach over centuries. They understood that advanced civilizations were fragile. They relied on complex supply chains and specialized production. Cut those chains, and entire worlds would collapse without a single shot being fired. Then they blockaded a human colony. New Perth was a young settlement on a frontier world. Only 30 years old, with barely 2 million inhabitants. The colony had minimal defenses, no military fleet, and limited food production. When Krynner warships appeared in orbit and delivered their ultimatum, the outcome seemed obvious. The colony administrator listened to the demand for surrender. She was a woman in her 60s, with gray hair and tired eyes. She had lived through a famine on Earth, survived a disease outbreak on a colony ship, and lost her husband in a mining accident. She had spent her life building New Perth from nothing, watching it grow from a few hundred desperate settlers to a thriving community. She recorded her response to the Krynner commander. "This is Administrator Chun. We have received your terms. After consulting with the Colony Council and the people of New Perth, we must decline. We will not surrender." The Krynner commander was confused. "You have no fleet, no orbital weapons. We control your space. Your food supplies will run out in weeks." "That is correct," Chun replied calmly. "But our answer remains the same." The commander thought she was stalling, playing for time until help arrived. He did not understand that for humans, some things mattered more than survival. He would learn. The blockade began. Krynner ships took up positions around New Perth, intercepting any vessel that tried to approach. The colony was cut off completely. No food imports, no medical supplies, no communication with the outside galaxy, except for brief transmissions that the Krynner allowed. The Krynner analysts predicted surrender within 2 weeks. The colony had some stored food, but rationing would only delay the inevitable. 2 weeks passed. The humans did not surrender, Administrator Chun implemented strict rationing. Every person in the colony received the same small portions, regardless of age or position. Gardens were converted to food production. Every scrap was used. Every resource stretched to its absolute limit. The Krina commander sent another message. Your people are going hungry. Children are suffering. This is unnecessary. Surrender now, and we will provide food. Chun's response was brief. We are hungry. We are suffering. We will not surrender. 4 weeks into the blockade, the Krina intercepted transmissions from the surface. People were losing weight. Medical facilities reported increasing cases of malnutrition. Children cried from hunger. Surely now the humans would break. Instead, something strange happened. The colony became more organized, not less. Communities formed food-sharing networks. Stronger individuals gave portions of their rations to the weak. Parents sacrificed their own meals to feed their children. The social structure did not collapse under pressure. It strengthened. The Krina commander reviewed the intelligence reports with growing frustration. This was not how sieges worked. Starving populations turned desperate. They fought each other for resources. They blamed their leaders. They demanded surrender to end their suffering. But the humans of New Perth seemed to grow more unified as conditions worsened. 8 weeks. 12 weeks. 16 weeks. People were dying now, slowly starving to death. The old and the sick went first, their bodies unable to sustain themselves on minimal rations. Every death was mourned. Every loss carved into the collective memory of the colony. But still, they did not surrender. Administrator Chan continued her regular broadcast of the colony. She did not sugarcoat their situation. She told them the truth. They were dying, and help might not come in time. But she also reminded them why they were fighting. We are human, she said in one broadcast, her own face gaunt from hunger. Our ancestors survived ice ages and plagues. They crossed oceans in wooden boats. They settled harsh lands. They endured slavery and oppression and wars. And through it all, they maintained one truth. Freedom is worth suffering for. We could end our hunger today by kneeling to the Krina. But we would lose something more important than our lives. We would lose our choice. We would lose our dignity. We would lose the right to say we stood when we could have knelt. The broadcast was intercepted and transmitted across the galaxy. Other species watched in horror and confusion as the humans slowly starved while refusing the simple option of surrender. To most galactic citizens, it made no sense. Survival was the primary drive of all biological life. Yet humans seemed to value something abstract: pride, dignity, freedom more than their own lives. But other humans understood. Across human space, ships began gathering. Not military vessels, but civilian ships, freighters, passenger liners, personal craft. Thousands of humans responded to the news from New Perth, volunteering to break the blockade. The Galactic Council tried to organize a proper military response, but the logistics took time. Fleets had to be assembled, permissions negotiated, battle plans formed. Weeks passed while bureaucracy ground forward. The human volunteers did not wait. They formed an impromptu fleet and headed for New Perth. Most of the ships were unarmed. Many were old and barely spaceworthy. But they came anyway, driven by something the Krina did not understand. The Krina commander detected the approaching ships and sent a warning. Turn back. Any vessel attempting to break the blockade will be destroyed. The response came from the lead ship, a battered freighter. We are humans bringing supplies to humans. You can destroy us, but more will come. And more after that. We will not abandon our people. The commander faced a choice. He could open fire on civilian vessels, making the Krina look like monsters to the entire galaxy. Or he could let them through, admitting his blockade had failed. Before he could decide, something else happened. 3 other species, inspired by human determination, sent their own supply ships. Then 5 more species. Then a dozen. The trickle became a flood as the galaxy watched and realized that the humans had revealed a fundamental weakness in the Krynner strategy. You could not starve people who were willing to die rather than submit. And you could not maintain a blockade when the entire galaxy decided to ignore it. The Krynner Empire faced a choice. They could escalate to genocide, destroying New Perth completely as an example. Or they could withdraw and admit their tactics had failed. The commander sent an urgent message to his superiors. The response took days. During that time, the volunteer fleet reached the blockade line. The Krynner warships powered weapons but did not fire. Everyone waited that finally, the order came. The Krynner withdrew. They claimed it was for humanitarian reasons. They spoke of showing mercy and avoiding unnecessary death. But everyone knew the truth. The humans had won by simply refusing to lose. They had survived for 6 months on minimal food, losing hundreds to starvation, but never surrendering. And in doing so, they had broken something fundamental in the Krynner strategy. If one species could resist the blockade, others would try. The Empire's primary method of conquest had been revealed as obsolete. You could not subjugate a population that would choose death over submission. Supply ships landed on New Perth, bringing food and medicine. The colonists, skeletal and weak, stumbled out to meet them. Many collapsed from emotion and exhaustion. Medical teams rushed to treat the worst cases. Administrator Chen, barely able to stand, made one final broadcast. We survived. We endured. We proved that humans cannot be broken by simple hunger. The Krynner learned this lesson the hard way. We hope others will learn it without testing us. The final death toll was 470 people, less than 1% of the population. Every loss was mourned. Every name was carved into a memorial. But the colony had survived, and in surviving, had changed the political landscape of the galaxy. Because now everyone knew humans would endure anything rather than surrender. And that made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because of their weapons or their fleets, but because they simply would not quit. The siege of New Perth sent shockwaves through every government and military in the galaxy. For the first time in recorded history, a major power had abandoned a conquest not because of military defeat, but because the target refused to be conquered. The Krynner Empire tried to minimize the damage to their reputation. They claimed the withdrawal was strategic, that the colony was not worth the effort. But nobody believed them. Everyone had watched the broadcasts. Everyone had seen a small human colony endure 6 months of starvation rather than kneel. Within a year, 3 different species that had been living under Krynner occupation launched rebellions. They had learned from the human example. If you refused to surrender, if you were willing to endure any suffering, then oppressors had only 2 choices: genocide or withdrawal. And genocide turned the entire galaxy against you. The Krynner Empire began to crumble. Not from military defeat, but from the simple realization that their methods no longer worked in a galaxy that included humans. The Galactic Council held emergency sessions to discuss the implications. Military strategists from dozens of species gathered to analyze what had happened at New Perth. The conclusion was unanimous and troubling. Humans have changed warfare, a general. From the aquatic thalassy species explained to the assembly. Traditional siege tactics rely on the assumption that populations will surrender to preserve their lives. But humans have demonstrated that this assumption is false. They will die before surrendering if they believe the cause is worthy. But surely not all humans feel this way, another general objected. The colony could have been an exception. Zealots or extremists. The Thalassy general pulled up data on human history. Look at their records. Siege of Leningrad, 900 days. Siege of Malta, over 2 years. Battle of Thermopylae, 300 soldiers holding against an army of thousands. Alamo, Masada, the Warsaw Uprising. Their history is filled with examples of humans choosing death over surrender. This is not an exception. This is their standard behavior when pushed to extremes. A military analyst from the insectoid Rex species added more information. We have also studied human military training. They specifically prepare their soldiers to resist beyond the point where other species would collapse. They practice fighting while injured. They train in extreme conditions deliberately. They teach psychological techniques to endure torture and hardship. Their entire military doctrine is built around the concept of refusing to quit. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. One general finally spoke what they were all thinking. How do you defeat an enemy that will not surrender? Even if you destroy their fleet, occupy their worlds, kill 90% of their population, the remaining 10% will continue fighting. You cannot defeat them, the Thalassy general said quietly. Not conventionally. The only way to truly beat humans is to kill every single one, including their children, before they grow up to continue the fight. And even attempting such genocide would turn every other species in the galaxy against you. The Krynner learned this lesson. I suggest we all remember it. The Galactic Council made a strategic decision. They elevated humanity's status from a minor species to a major power, despite having a fraction of the territory and population of older civilizations. The logic was simple. You wanted humans as allies, not enemies. Within 2 years, humans served on defense committees throughout the galaxy. Their expertise in surviving impossible situations became highly valued. Colonies facing difficult environments specifically recruited human settlers because they knew humans could endure what others could not. The Human Studies Institute expanded its research, focusing now on how other species might learn from human resilience. Could other civilizations develop similar psychological frameworks? Could pain tolerance be taught? The answer was complicated. Other species could improve their endurance with training, but they lacked the deep cultural programming that made humans naturally stubborn. For humans, persistence was not just a skill. It was an identity. They had countless stories, songs, and legends celebrating individuals who refused to give up. Children were raised on tales of heroes who overcame impossible odds through sheer determination. One researcher put it simply, humans have built an entire culture around the concept of endurance. Every child learns that quitting is shameful and persisting is noble. This cultural programming, combined with their biological capacity for pain tolerance, creates a positive feedback loop. They teach themselves to be unbreakable. 5 years after New Perth, a human delegation attended a major galactic summit. They were invited to speak about conflict resolution and defense strategy. The lead delegate was a former soldier, a woman who had served in multiple combat zones and earned the respect of aliens and humans alike. She stood before the assembled representatives of 200 species and spoke plainly. Many of you fear us. You have learned what humans are capable of when pushed to extremes. You have seen that we do not surrender easily, that we can endure pain and hardship that would break other species. And you wonder if this makes us dangerous. The chamber was silent, waiting for her to continue. The truth is, yes, we are dangerous. But not because we want to be. We are dangerous because our history has taught us a hard lesson. Sometimes the universe gives you only bad choices. Sometimes you must choose between pain with dignity or pain without it. Between dying free or living enslaved. Between fighting back or giving up. When faced with such choices, humans will almost always choose to fight, to endure, to persist. She paused, looking around the room at the alien faces watching her. But here is what you need to understand. We do not seek out these terrible choices. We do not want to fight. We do not enjoy suffering. What we want is the same thing every species here wants: peace, prosperity, safety for our families. The difference is that humans have learned we cannot count on the universe to provide these things. We have to earn them. We have to defend them. We have to be willing to suffer for them. So yes, we are dangerous to our enemies. But we are the most loyal friends you could ever have. Because once humans commit to something, whether it is a cause, an alliance, or a promise, we do not back down. We do not quit when things get hard. We do not abandon our allies when the situation becomes difficult. Another delegate spoke up, a timid herbivore species from a peaceful world. But what if your determination leads to unnecessary death? What if surrender would save lives? The human considered this carefully. That is a fair question. And the answer is that humans do surrender sometimes. When we have no choice, when all hope is truly lost, when continuing to fight would accomplish nothing but pointless death, yes, we can choose surrender. We are not suicidal. We are not insane. But the threshold for when we consider the situation truly hopeless is much higher than for other species. We will keep fighting long after others would have given up, because our history has shown us that sometimes the impossible becomes possible if you just keep trying. The summit continued for several days. Alliances were formed. Treaties were signed. And through it all, the human delegation maintained a simple message. Humanity sought peace, but was prepared for war. They would be the best friends or the worst enemies any species could have, and the choice of which belonged to others. Over the following decades, humanity's influence grew, not through conquest or intimidation, but through demonstration of their core values. When disasters struck, humans volunteered for the most dangerous rescue operations. When new worlds needed settling, humans took the harshest environments. When wars threatened, human soldiers served in the defense of not just their own worlds, but allied species as well. And slowly, other species began to learn from the human example. Not the physical pain tolerance that was biological and could not be taught, but the psychological framework, the refusal to give up, the transformation of hardship into strength. These could be learned. A generation after New Perth, the Galactic Council established educational programs based on human principles. Young aliens learned about persistence, about pushing through difficulty, about choosing to stand even when kneeling seemed easier. The programs were controversial, criticized by some as promoting reckless behavior. But the results were undeniable. Species that adopted these principles became more resilient, more innovative, more capable. The galaxy was changing, slowly reshaped by human influence. Not through force, but through example. Not through conquest, but through demonstration that there was another way to exist. That comfort and safety, while valuable, were not the only things worth pursuing. That sometimes growth required discomfort, progress required risk, and freedom required the willingness to defend it. On Earth, in the museums and schools, the story of New Perth was taught to every child. Not as a tale of triumph, but as a reminder. A reminder that surrender was always an option, but so was resistance. That pain was temporary, but quitting was permanent. That humans had survived ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters because they simply refused to stop trying. The memorial on New Perth grew over the years. 470 names, carved in stone. Visitors from across the galaxy came to see it, to pay respects to the humans who had starved rather than kneel. Each visitor left understanding something they had not understood before.